Let's call the town council meeting of June 9th, 2026 to order. Jennifer, will you take roll?
Councilmember Alberish.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Gold.
Here.
Councilmember Wall.
Here.
Mayor Domkowski.
Here, thank you. Councilmember Wall, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
And to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, with that, we'll go on to public comment. Persons wishing to address the council on any non-agendized items are invited to do so now that we are within the jurisdiction of the town. Please note, however, that the council cannot undertake any extended discussion or act on non-agendized items. Such items can be referred to staff for placement on a future agenda. This will be limited to 5 persons, 3 minutes each. And we will stick with that tonight, given we do have a very full agenda once again. So if you have a non-agendized item and you'd like to speak on it, please approach the mic. Welcome, Kati.
Good evening. I'm Kati Dancer, 110 Landing Drive, Woodside. This year marks my 27th year as president and program director of Woodside Junior Riders. Woodside Junior Riders has been a local institution since 1947. It is the oldest continuously operating riding program for children in Northern California. We operate on a very tight, modest budget and keep our costs as low as possible for participating families. Our 8-week English riding program serves children ages 6 to 16 and emphasizes good horsemanship, horse safety, proper horse care, and respect for horses. Many junior riders families who are new to horses, after participating in the program for several years, they end up buying horse property in town. This helps preserve Woodside's equestrian and rural heritage. I am here tonight to ask the council's help in protecting the property at Kiley Field, the more than 20 horses on site each summer, and the nearby residents from significant fire risk posed by parking hot vehicles on dry grass field in July. On September 2nd, 2025, a major fire was started along 280 by a car pulling off the shoulder near Farm Hill Boulevard. The fire grew and burned several acres of Joe Putnam's property at the end of Mission Trail. It was a significant fire. My home is very close by. We could hear all the fire trucks going up the road, and I could see the smoke drifting towards my home. Shortly thereafter, a sheriff came to my door and told us we should evacuate. I had 4 horses at home, 2 dogs, a cat, and a bird. Our trailer does not hold 4 horses. Luckily, a neighbor rode one out bareback past the sirens, and with the planes overhead, I took the rest of the animals and tried to leave, but our roads became so clogged with emergency vehicles that I had to drive our pickup truck down the horse trail to get to safety. If a fire broke out in the Tripp Road area, it would be a much worse disaster. During the annual Junior Riders Board meeting at the end of January in 2025, we discussed the devastating Los Angeles fires. The board concluded that allowing vehicles to park on grass was no longer responsible given the increased fire risk. Although parking on the lower grass field has been done in the past, the Junior Riders Board determined it was not worth the risk of a potential catastrophic fire, and especially in this area that is designated as a fire safety hazard zone. Many residents in the Tripp area already face challenges obtaining homeowners insurance because of that area's wildfire risk. The Mounted Patrol was formally notified at its February 4th, 2025 board meeting that overflow parking on the lower grass would no longer be permitted due to fire concerns. After receiving this notice, and without my knowledge or any notification to junior riders, Rick DeBenedetti, acting on behalf of the Mounted Patrol, approached Kevin Bryant and obtained a permit authorizing parking on the grass field.
Kati, I hate to ask. We're over the 3 minutes. Is there a way to wrap up your ask?
I am just requesting that the town council direct the manager in amending the permit to not include the lower grass field and to use the Tripp Road and surrounding paved streets instead. They can still use our front lot.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
And thank you for everything that you and Scott do for Kylie and the junior riders.
Thank you.
This has been going on for 12 or 18 months, obviously, and I thought we were sort of going a different direction when this came up a year ago. I know we're opening up Trip Road to parking and making it a one-way street, and we have a waterfall for that, to the gravel, to the lot, and there's conditions on the lot, and we're going to talk about making sure this gets agendized next year because now we're very late in the cycle once again, but I think a lot of us went and visited. I don't know if anybody has any other views that they want to express. We've taken some steps, but I don't know if we need to take more steps this go around or even can. But I was one of, I guess, 4 folks on the council that visited Kylie on this issue. Yeah, Dick.
I think I've been to the rodeo many times and parking is a nightmare. And their cars are everywhere. But I've also seen what the fires can do here. And I think that back lot is subject to potential fire. And I think we got to put that as a priority over anything else.
Is there a way to stuff that is not
We can put it back on the agenda for June 23rd, but operations are already in place to follow a traffic plan and the conditions of approval because the encroachment permit was approved, which also includes having a water truck down on the grass field. That was a new condition that was added this year. And then the mounted patrol will have fire extinguishers on the property, on Kylie throughout the property, available for the paid parking attendants to utilize in the case of a fire. And there's a fire hydrant right outside Kylie Equestrian Center where a fire hose will be placed and available until the emergency response teams get there.
Are we good? Can we commit to agendizing this when it comes up next go around publicly?
Is it too late? Is it too late now to modify the permit this year, realistically?
I think practically speaking, it is. This was a permit that was issued. We at this table were not aware that it was being issued. There was a conversation last year that this was to come to you before a permit was issued, but the previous town manager issued the permit. And so Melissa's tried very hard to make sure that we'll have adequate fire protection out there. And there are some additional conditions that he did add to the permit that she's just discussed with a water truck and things of that nature for this year.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, Sue. Ms. Paletti.
Hi, I'm Sue Paletti. I live on Raimondo, and a warm welcome to Susan George. Nice to see you. I discovered a safety finding that bears directly on the town's decision to proceed with the RFP for the Raimondo parcel. I obtained this information through a California Public Records Act request, and based on my review of these records, it does not appear that the information was shared with the town council prior to the RFP process going forward. I bring the email to your attention tonight as a matter of public record. This is from the fire marshal to Kevin Bryant, the town manager. November 19th, 2024. Hi, Kevin. I wanted to provide a brief update on my meeting that Tom and I had with Sue Paletti a few weeks ago. Apologies, I have not had time to inform you. She conducted much research and had in her possession county record documentation and town of Woodside records dating back to 1975. Rancho Cañada, as referred to, was a large plot of land that was subdivided into separate parcels. Documents show this is already a subdivided area with more than 30 units in this area. I have not researched it further since currently there's nothing on the table for development, but wanted to let you know there's a good amount of evidence to support their claims. And if truly the case, this parcel in question would not be able to be developed without another road for access. Before any developers are brought in, and before the town spends money on developing the land, I would strongly recommend a thorough investigation on fact-checking to avoid any legal actions against the town by the residents. The district is here to support you and the challenges for meeting state requirements, but we also must consider the evidence being provided and the fact that the search for alternate locations to build are becoming more apparent. Thank you. Have a safe day. Given the life safety concerns and the fire marshal's recommendation to consider an alternate location, the residents and I respectfully request that you halt the RFP process for the Raimondo parcel and proceed with finding alternative locations. I'm submitting the fire marshal's email for the public record for tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Paletti. Yes.
Hi, I'm Karen Offen. I'm part of the crew on Raimondo, and I fully support the research that Sue Paletti has been doing lately and the conclusions that have come up in the course of the discussions about the second exit road. It's very important for everybody here to understand that virtually everyone on the street is aware of this and planning to take action if necessary to make sure that we get that second road if any development happens to be forthcoming. So I wanted to just remind you, and it's true that the town council did attach a proviso to the parcel in one of the earlier meetings. And also want to remind you of that. Just, we wanted to keep this in the discussion, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Offen. You know, we were, on those last two comments, we were going to have some ability for the public to weigh in on RFPs and make sure these items were included as part of the conditions of those RFPs. Do we have a sense for timing on that here over the course of the summer or early fall?
I don't think it's going to happen soon because we are in the midst of getting the master sewer study information, which will indicate whether there's capacity for development currently, and if not, what would need to occur from an infrastructure perspective before that would go forward in any manner. So there is no work being done on the RFP right now.
Okay, and the master sewer study will come before council in July or?
I think July or perhaps soon after you return in September.
Okay. Okay, so everybody has a sense for timing. Okay, any other public comments? And I see none in the Zoom room. Anyone in the Zoom? 32 people, plenty of questions for later, I guess. So we will close public comment and move on to the consent calendar. Items in the consent are considered routine and will be approved by one roll call motion unless a item is pulled by the council or the public. Is there any item by any council member that you would like to see pulled?
6.
Number 6. Any items from the public that you would like to see pulled? Did I get a motion for 1 through 5? Oh, yes, Jen. Number 2? Okay. All right, we'll take a motion for 1, 3, 4, 5.
So moved. Second.
Councilmember Albrecht,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Gold,
Yes.
Councilmember Wall, Mayor Domkowski.
Yes, we'll go in order. Councilmember Wallen, number 2.
So, first, I think this is great, potentially great opportunity. And I wanted to just, Louis, you and I had talked a little bit about this Senate bill SB1 funding. And I know the staff report gives the list of projects that have been submitted, which tracks to our road rehabilitation project. But I wanted to understand, what other projects did we consider? Is there an opportunity to potentially add projects? Because I know my understanding of SB1 is that it's quite broad. I think we had talked about potentially including safe routes to school. So maybe just kind of provide that context around how we landed on the road rehab projects and whether or not we could have an opportunity to add things in the future or adjust. Wanted to hear about that.
Yes, Councilmember Wall. So for the SB1 funding, for this particular funding and for this purpose is for strictly for road pavement, and it requires a pavement management program. So the town does have that, and we utilize the MTC services and to provide us with a list of roads. So as you mentioned, for SB1 funding, there are other opportunities, and we are pursuing grant opportunities, falling within that structure at different types of project, related possibly to drainage and other infrastructure related project. But for this particular SB1 purpose, it's just strictly for pavement rehabilitation.
When will we have a chance to submit other projects in the near future, or how will, for example, if we wanted to seek funding for a Safe Routes to School project, like how would that happen?
Yes, we do get notification through the CCAG, and they would notify us of different types of funding opportunity coming in the year. So once we receive that, we will pursue opportunities that would best fit for the town. So
And we did recently get one.
we did, yes.
So what are you guys evaluating projects to seek funding for that one that you did recently?
Yes, one of the funding we did apply for is Safe Streets funding, and we're looking at different opportunities in different streets, and also traffic-related opportunities. And there's also, as you mentioned, Safe Route to School, and we did apply for that for the TDA 3. I recently did a presentation for that, and we're hoping to hear back from CCAG sometime, maybe after the summer, see if we're able to be awarded as part of that this year's package.
Any public comment on 2? I guess we'll try to take them both together. Number 6,
Yeah,
Brown.
I'd be interested in knowing what was the original contract amount for this project? And what will the addition of this take the total cost of this contract to?
So, Councilmember Brown, and I believe the original contract, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a little over $100,000. But for this amendment, there is no cost involved. We're only extending the term. The term is about to expire at the end of June. We want to extend this term so we can continue utilizing this agreement with our consultant.
It still brings another $66,000 that we didn't budget, correct?
There's still money in the budget. They're not done with their design work. That's correct.
So the original budget still covers enough for the 66,000?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any public comment on 6? We get a motion for 2 and 6.
I move we approve 2 and 6.
Second.
Councilmember Abarish.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Gold. Councilmember Wall. Mayor Domkowski.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Excuse me, Mayor Domkowski.
Yes.
Could I make a request for the council to consider taking new business item B before old business item A?
Is council okay with that? Okay, so we will pivot to a discussion on presentation of the proposed budget for 2026 and 2027. And I hand it off to you, Melissa.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to introduce, we hired our consultant, Susan George with SEG Consulting, to assist myself and Corey Stoker-Pedalino, the Administrative Services Director, in preparing the budget for introduction tonight before the council. So I'm going to turn this over to Ms. George to give a presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. And good evening to all of you. It's really weird to be back here.
Yeah. Could we move the microphone just a little closer
yeah,
there, Susan? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Then welcome back.
Thank you. I'm not going to make a long presentation. You've had the document for several days now. I've had an opportunity to meet with each of you in the last couple of months to talk about the general finances of the town. I wanted to point out that this budget is not quite balanced. It's $13,000 out of balance, which is an unusual number. But I also wanted to point out that if you look at the 5-year forecast, that that number gets bigger every year in the 5-year forecast. And that's why this is such a pivotal moment, because you have the opportunity to allow Melissa to make some internal changes in terms of how we do our finances, how we keep our records. And it's also an opportunity for the council to talk about and give us direction on how you want us to move ahead to eliminate that gap. And now's the perfect time to do it. So, because it's not out of control, but it can get out of control if we don't rein it in. Having said that, you are still in very good financial shape. You've got a lot of money in reserve. You are still contributing $1 million to the capital improvement program this year from your undesignated reserves. But we need to, going forward, keep an eye on both how much of that undesignated reserve we still have available, and also just to make sure that our revenues and our expenditures match up. I would be happy to answer any questions or to walk you through the budget. It's your at your direction.
Thank you, Ms. George. Questions on the budget? Anywhere? On this side.
Yep, got a few.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you for the letter of transmittal and the highlights. So as I read it, I think there's 4 or 5 controversial issues that
Yes, there
I
are.
just wanted to ask you to comment on. Our biggest expenditure is law enforcement services with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. We usually, the annual cost is about 3.3 million. I know there's an adjustment that makes it look less, but it's really 3.3 million. I think we did get a credit for that. And this current year, looking forward, 26, 27, it's going to be almost 3.6 million. I don't think we have much control over that, but that's a big number. And, $300,000 or so that we're more or less obligated to pay if we want law enforcement in our area. Any comments on that, by the way? I do have a couple of others, but.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And this is the second year of a new 5-year term. We were lucky to get that $200,000 credit this current year, but it just makes the increase going into next year seem even worse to bear. But it is between that and your salaries and benefits. Those are the 2 biggest chunks that comprise your $13+ million general fund budget.
Okay. There are 2 that apparently are, well, not apparently, that are controversial amongst our citizens. And I'm sure we're going to have some comments on both of them tonight. The first one is the temporary traffic light. I like the quotes around temporary. It's been 3 years. It's $200,000 a year, $600,000 we've paid. We probably could have built most of a permanent traffic light for the amount that we've invested in a temporary little trailer. But anyway, that's, could you just talk about moving forward, what's in the budget now that we have to work with?
Sure. And Louis can jump in at any moment if he wishes to. I've been working with Louis on the CIP, so he's kind of a co-conspirator here. We eliminated all but 3 months worth of the temporary traffic light funding from this budget. Louis has already started working on potential solutions moving forward. There's $350,000 in the first year of the capital improvement program for some kind of permanent replacement up there. And I'm not going to guess what that's going to be, but I'll let Louis comment in a minute. There are also funds in the second and third year of the capital improvement program as well for this project in case they are needed. But I'm not going to second guess what the solution's going to be.
So, if I may add, so the $350,000 that's proposed in the CIP, it's really used for several purposes. One of them is to do a transitional cleanup and also preparation where we can clean up vegetation in the shelter and also create the turnouts that's currently sort of needs some cleanup work. This will allow a lot safer passage through those narrow lanes. And at the same time, part of the funding will be hiring a consultant to conduct a permanent design. We're looking at widening the road as also another alternative. We do have a traffic signal, permanent signal that's been designed, and that's still on the table, but we haven't never looked at widening the road. And I think that's an option we should pursue, at least review and see the possibility of that. And the consultant will also help us look for funding, grants funding for widening this road. And I think widening the road is a potential permanent solution. So
Widening the road.
that's correct, widening that section of the Upper Ola Honda Road. So the name that I've created for this project in the CIP is called the Upper Ola Honda Road Safety Project. And the purpose is to eventually create a safe solution for that section of Ola Honda Road.
The other points I wanted to make are very brief. I'm going to pass for now on the Kite Hill wildflower maintenance and restoration and the credit card fees, which I think are, we certainly need to discuss. But I did want to mention the defensible space as well. That's also a pretty big number. And
Yes, it is.
the citizens take advantage, take advantage in a positive way. I don't mean that negatively. But it's a big number. And I don't think you're asking us to revise the rules tonight.
No, no,
It's something to
we're
consider and
suggesting that
agendize.
we put it on some future agenda, public notice it so that people know that they can come in and give you their 2 cents.
Got it. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Councilmember.
Yes,
Brown.
first of all, on Side Road, median island beautification. We're showing a budget item here of $2.5 million in 26, 27. What project is that for?
This is for the stretch of Woodside Road from just east of I-2 way to the Alameda de los Pogas. And this is a project for which funds have been donated. And I think
This includes a donated fund project. So this is that project.
this
Okay.
is the donated fund.
Okay, all right, fine. I've looked at the sheriff budget and I'd like to suggest, I'm not going to litigate it tonight, but I think that we ought to appoint a committee, task force to really look hard at what we're paying for and what we're getting for it in terms of do we need the 2 motorcycle police cops, for example? We're writing a lot of tickets every year, over 300 a month. What are we getting for those, for all that effort? Is it really reducing accidents, injuries, crime, anything like that? What are we getting for that? Because this budget keeps going up and up and up and up. And when you look at the cost per person that we're paying for here, it is huge. And I just want us to put together a task force to figure out what can we do about all this? Because I know Portola Valley's gone through the same thing and they've actually got a reduction, substantial reduction in what they're paying. They probably sacrifice a lot to get there, but I want to understand what did they do? And I can talk to them about that. But what can we do? Because this is going to kill us in a couple more years if it keeps going up like this.
We do have that. We have an ad hoc sheriff's contract committee. It's Councilmember Aberration, myself. So we can certainly dust that off. Other questions or comments?
I have a question. So I just want to better understand for the Upper Old La Honda solution. So it sounds like we have funding for 3 months to continue with the temporary light, and then what would happen after that?
Well, I'm not going to jump on Lewis's lines here. Can you give us a timeline for what you're studying right now?
Sure. So I do have a proposal from Fairlawn Construction. That's the company we're currently renting the temporary traffic signal from. And one of the transitional work that I mentioned earlier is to really to clean up the side, the shoulder of that narrow stretch. By doing that, we could potentially increase about 4 feet of space and just be able to clean the turnouts to allow traffic to pass. And that would be something we do immediately. And Fairlawn has agreed to keep the traffic light while they do this work and not charge the town for the traffic signal. And also at the same time, I am proposing to look at purchasing a temporary traffic light for the town that we can manage ourselves at a lower cost. And that can be something we can install after we get a chance to improve the road and clean it.
Got it. So I just want to make sure. So it's so we'll be cleaning the road while there's still light in place, and then if we go down this route, is it going to be the new replacement that we purchase? Would that be installed like right away when the current temporary light is taken out?
It is our hope that we can have no gap during that transition. Although I'm not certain about lead time in purchasing these equipment. So we'll definitely work our best to try to get the temporary signal, the one that we plan on purchase in place before the old one is removed.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wall, your microphone.
Oh, yeah. So Susan, we're so thankful that you were able to help us with this. I think we're so fortunate to have your experience and your expertise. So thank you for that. Maybe before going into kind of the specific program expenditures, you started off your presentation by saying we have a pivotal opportunity to make some changes. And I'm wondering, could you share your insight into, or what your recommendations are in terms of changes that we have the opportunity to make?
Sure, and these are not just my ideas. It's Melissa and Corey and I have been talking about this as a team. Some of the things that I think were highlighted in the third quarterly budget review, which is really what daylighted some of these issues, are things such as contracts coming before you for approval during the year after the budget's been adopted, but no recommendation coming forward to provide the funding for that. And that's part of the problem this current year. So one of the things that Melissa is going to have to ensure, and with Corey's help, is that we have an ironclad procedure in place that when anything comes before you that involves the approval of funds, that it is certified that there are funds, that's clearly stated to you. You don't have to ask it. And that means that Corey and Melissa have to ensure, and Lewis, have to ensure that the funding is available, or they have to ask you for it. So, so that would eliminate that problem. Contract management is another one that Corey and Melissa have already started to work on. We have some contracts. Actually, Lewis's earlier contract tonight is a good example of this, where contracts have expiration dates, and in the past, they've just kind of been ignored. And the programs continued, bills paid, even though technically we really were not in contract. So that's something that I know Melissa is thinking about, getting a contract administration module for our ComDev program.
Springbrook, yeah.
Or Springbrook, yeah. That would help facilitate the management of agreements to make sure that it's easier to ensure that things are not expired, and also that not to exceed amounts have not been exceeded. So those are just a couple of examples. More regular reporting to the council and to the public, and also to have a higher level of involvement of the department heads, both in putting the budget together and in monitoring it, and being held accountable for it during the year.
That all makes a lot of sense. And I think those are really good recommendations. I think, like you said, we didn't uncover anything horrible, but we've uncovered some management and process issues that, we really need to make sure we course correct to get ahead of that before, a small problem becomes a lot bigger. So
that's exactly right.
Very thankful for you identifying that. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about Kite Hill. And I wanted to understand from Melissa, what direction are you looking to the town council tonight on the Kite Hill topic?
Sure. In the budget is a line item for the Kite Hill Wildflower Preservation and Fire Mitigation project that's been going on for over 10 years. And we carried over $60,000. Craig Dremen performs the work on Kite Hill, and every year he's worked with the previous town managers to put together a budget of what he recommends needs to be done for the upcoming year. This year, we carried over the $60,000, but in reviewing past budgets adopted and then actual expenses, we've gone over budget almost every year, above the 60,000. It ranges from 30 to 80,000 over the past 10 years, and we've gone over. And if if we are about 57,000, Corey has the number for this year.
We're currently at $51,000 with a proposal of another $6,000 on the table.
And so we're just looking to council if you'd like us to continue to budget for the $60,000. We also came across that we don't have a written contract with Mr. Dremen, so we could put something together if the council wished to go out for an RFP, could submit a bid. That's the other option.
So if we were kind of starting from scratch, what would the process look like to provide maintenance and landscaping services to Kite Hill?
We would start with Public Works, Lewis and his staff determining if the town staff could maintain Kite Hill and what that would cost, if it's feasible with their work schedule and other tasks that they need to do and other fire mitigation work around this time of year. But we would put together and see what the cost is based on the scope of work currently that's being done. And if it is above the town manager's signing authority, then we could put together a request for proposal and put it out for bid and bring that forward to council to accept one of the bids.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and maybe just to wrap up with me for a second. So the Defensible Space Program, that's going to come back to us, and there'll presumably be some recommendation that we can no longer do 3, but maybe it's 2.5 or 2 or whatever the number is going to be. We're exceeding our budget. It's a very successful program, but yeah, that's part of it, I guess.
Yes, it can come. You could, if you'd like it to come back, and we can revisit improving the program, making some changes, and also discussing the budget. If you want to keep it at the 500,000, we have gone over, as we stated in our documents, we've gone over, and this time of year is when it's very busy. Everyone's doing their cleanup of their properties before the end of the fiscal year.
Can I make a point to this one?
Yes, of course.
I'm sorry to cut in here, but
No problem.
to the defensible space, I'm all for watching our pennies here, but remember, we're all now under the gun from Woodside Fire to make our properties very safe. And that for many, many people, that means you've got to take a lot of trees down. And I would hate to see us pull back on a program that a lot of people are now going to be tapping into. But we got to be aware of that in our budgeting too, though, that we have to maybe go up and settle down. But I don't want to be cutting back on our support for what the residents are being demanded to do, mandated to do in this town by Woodside Fire.
You know, we'll hit that on some deliberation. I hear where you're coming from on that. The second part of my question was, I've just received some feedback that this is an unusual program, a bottom-up kind of program where some citizens self-select in, but those citizens aren't necessarily a disadvantaged group, or is there a way to get a legal opinion for this, whether this is a program that, whether it's a legal program?
Sure, I'd be happy to take a look at it and give you an opinion.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned we're 10 years in on Kite Hill. How long was the restoration effort supposed to be, and how long does it take to restore wildflowers on a site? I mean, we're 10 years in and we're still talking about another 10 years.
Another
of
10
funding.
years, according to Craig. I was not here at the time when this came to light. But the land was gifted to the town, and in the documentation, it does say that the town is to maintain it in perpetuity.
Okay.
sorry, just question, maintain Kite Hill or maintain the wildflowers?
Oh, the Joan Olson Preserve and the wildflower piece, but it just says maintain.
And then it's sort of a statement question, but given we have a little bit of a hole, it's just a reminder that we funded an extra pension account, a pension reserve account after COVID-19 hit the market pretty hard in 2020. And we put $2 million in there as a council, and it's now pushing $3.5 million. And we've never taken a withdrawal. And it is meant to ultimately subsidize the pension line. And I see the pension line is $654,000 going to $750 to $813 and so forth. So there is a question with this huge appreciation if we start using some of those profits on even if it's just a couple $100,000 in order to keep some of these projects that people have been very adamant about having, like a stoplight at Old La Honda and whatnot. So I guess another question that we might want to give guidance on is whether or not we want to start a withdrawal program from our PARS account of a couple $100,000 a year. Any other questions or comments before opening up public comment? All right, we will open public comment. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on any item, or not on any item, on this item, item B, the budget? Welcome,
Nadia
Ms. Lubin.
I don't know how many of you were around when the McDowell subdivision was proposed for the Glens and how hard the town worked to minimize the number of houses that went in and maximize the amount of open space. And it is a fabulous town resource. Jen, I don't know if you walk up there, but the wildflowers are
All the time.
spectacular, and I think it just finished. And we're actually friends. I don't know if we recommended Craig to the town, but we're friends with Craig, and I think he's thinking about retiring, but I don't know about training town staff to take care of it. But 60,000 in light of the whole budget doesn't seem that much, but if there's some way to not go backwards, but at least progress on Kite Hill and really make sure it stays as beautiful as it is and maintain it and keep the weeds and everything else out, I would encourage you to do so, because it's really a fabulous resource. And Craig has worked very hard. I know what he's had to go through to eliminate all the invasive grasses and bring in all the natives. And it's one of the few places in California where serpentine soil comes to the surface, and it supports all sorts of butterflies and other insects. And so we're very fortunate to have it. And I encourage you to do everything you can to keep it and not let it fall back. Thanks.
Going to the Zoom room, and Dan Arthur. I'm sorry, it's a long name, but Van Dan, we'll call.
Hey there.
Hi.
This is Vandana Mathur. I live up on Old La Honda Road, and I'm the representative for the road to the town. I want to, thank the preparers of the budget for taking into consideration the safety issues on the top of our road. I would like to, though, highlight that, there has to be a continuous solution to the safety issues on that segment of the road. We cannot have a situation where we have no light and no permanent solution to that segment of the road. It's very twisty, it's very narrow, it's been damaged. When a truck went over it, you can't see the oncoming traffic. And so the stoplight has been absolutely a godsend. There was extremely strong support on the Hill for it, and not only on Old La Honda Road, but also Skyline residents who many of them commute back and forth, take kids back and forth on the road for that light, just because it was so treacherous previous to having the light, and we're very, very grateful to have it. So although, it's great that there's a plan to clean up the shoulder. I mean, I would point out that there is actually no shoulder. It's a steep cliff on one side that goes down, and the other side is just a sheer wall going up. And then you have this narrow road that's only 10.5 feet in places. So, it's a one-way road where we're trying to have two-way traffic with limited visibility. So although I think, cleaning up the shoulder, cutting vegetation, I think those are all very good things to try to improve visibility. That alone, I do not think will suffice to make that segment of the road safe. So once that process is complete, I think we're still going to need to have a light until something more permanent is done with the road. Whether that solution is the permanent light, which I can say, over 92% of people on Skyline and over 82% of people on Old La Honda Road are strongly in favor of, or a different solution. But we cannot be left with, nothing there that does not manage the safety risks up on that part of the road.
Thank you. Any other public comments? We can get you a microphone, Ms. Gilbert. Thank you, Ms. Lubin. We've got a large Zoom audience tonight, so yeah.
I want to talk about Olive Hill Lane just for a few minutes. It's a not very wide road, and it's really getting really heavy duty people walking down the middle. And I think the town at some point had done something on the sides, because there is some space on the sides that they did something where people could walk if they wanted. Well, I guess they don't like to do that, but it's not safe at all, and it's getting worse because it's become a place where people think, oh, it's not too busy here. Oh, yeah, it is. So we come down off of our driveway. We're at the corner of Albion and Olive Hill, and we're like going really slow because we know what we've been seeing lately. People are zooming around, like coming from downtown, coming up and windy, and then you're going, oh, yay, let's go down here. It's not good, and now we're going into some good weather, hopefully, and people will be trying to walk more, and I'm concerned that I would like to see someone from the town go down and check out what was built or added to down the sides that were dirt, but they put, I don't know, stones, or not stones, but something was there that you could not have to walk on the road. That's all. So somebody's going to get hit there, because I've seen it several times. And so we come out of our driveway and we're like, we look very carefully. And unless somebody we don't like comes there, and then we'll just, run them over. Okay.
Thank you. And I see Lewis shaking his head that he'll go do a spot check there, so.
There is a trail on the side of the road. Please walk it.
Okay. Any other public comments? On the budget, we will close public comment and open any deliberation. I tried my best to capture the direction that was given. I can try, but go ahead if anybody would like to speak on an issue.
I can deliberate and propose what direction I think should be given. So maybe I'll start with the recommendations for increased process controls that we heard from Ms. George. So I would be very much in support of the council giving direction to Melissa to follow up on, I think I've noted 4 recommendations. So improvements to our contract process, which included making sure that there's not a gap between the contract execution and the funding, and that we need a better process to ensure that funds are available. Second, would be improved contract management. So we need to make sure that deadlines are followed, that end dates are also followed. And I really like the idea of getting, I think Susan, you referred to it as a contract admin module. I think that's probably like just a contract management tool. I think that would be really important given what we've learned. I think we need to follow up on the recommendation to have more regular reporting to the town council. We already have quarterly reporting, so I'd like to understand, like, how frequent, what would be in that report, and perhaps we could augment the reporting to not just include kind of the numbers around the budget, but also reporting on the controls and processes that are in place to support the numbers, right? The contract management, the department budgeting, all of that. And I also think regular involvement of the department heads would be really important. And I think one thing that we haven't done very well is have a strategic plan with strategic goals. I think, that's something that I've been advocating for a number of years. And I think that flows down to the department heads as well. I think department heads should have, goals that flow up to the town's strategic goals, and that their budget would be in service of those goals. So I think I would see that as part of the involvement of the department head. So that's the direction I would get that I would give to follow up on the recommendations that we heard from Ms. George. And I would love to hear about what's being done rather soon. So I don't know whether we could get a report back, before we conclude for the August recess. So just to kind of hear what progress has been made before we adjourn for the summer. On the specific budget items, I think it's really important that we have continuous traffic control at Old La Honda Road. I think people that drive that road, that live up there, have become accustomed to having that traffic control. So it is very expensive, and I'm very supportive of finding a more cost-effective permanent solution. But I don't think we can have a gap. I think that would create some not great safety problems. And I'd like to understand, like, when will we hear more about the permanent solutions that are being proposed? Is that something that we'll hear about again before the summer recess, before the end of the year? Like, I think it'd be great to understand that. I would give direction to come back with us with a proposal around the defensible space program, including, a legal analysis. Is it indeed legal? And what our options are. Can we cap it? Can we, make a sliding scale so people more in need get more? Like, I'm sure there's lots of ways we could make it more affordable. So I would give that direction. Love the idea from Councilmember Brown to create a task force on the sheriff. I know we had an ad hoc committee on the sheriff contract, but I think a new committee that really kind of digs into what value are we getting, how are we getting reports from the sheriff? That's, what, like Councilmember Gold pointed out, it's like our number one line item. And we don't hear very regularly from the sheriff. And I think a committee could also look into alternatives. I know Atherton has its own police force. I'd be curious if that potentially could be an option for Woodside. So would propose that direction and coming back again rather soon to hear kind of what could be done. On Kite Hill, I walk it all the time. I think it's an amazing resource. I think Craig has done an absolutely amazing job, but it is expensive. And so I think we need to take a fresh look at, how can we maintain it as a wonderful resource? How can we continue to have Craig involved? But also, look at what the town crew could potentially do. I think an RFP is a really good idea. I think getting a contract in place, it sounds like that's something that we need to clean up. So would give the direction to look at that and come back to us with a proposal. And I think that is it.
I'll jump in. The other two were to consider whether we should start hitting the PARS account for a couple $100,000 a year to help with the budget, and then proposal around credit card fee recapture was also mentioned. That should be an easy one. I'll just mention on the sheriff's contract, obviously, not obviously, it would be hard to afford our own police force. So we do have a monopoly provider situation, and that will potentially complicate things. But yes, we can, of course, look at what people want to do. And I think that otherwise, Councilmember Wall was, as usual, very thorough. So any other direction, or do people generally agree with the direction and augmented direction?
Generally agree.
Generally agree.
Generally agree.
Okay.
I do have a couple
Yes.
minutes to make.
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. So some of these are easy and simple, and I think that sounds like we're consensus here on the implementation of these, and I would say hopefully we can green light those tonight. One of them is the process changes that Councilmember Wall referred to. I think that's a pretty easy one. Get the module for contract controls and let's get that done. I feel the same way about credit card charges. They should, it's pretty rare these days that I don't make a large credit card, especially to even the state when you pay your income taxes. If it doesn't come out of your bank account, they charge you a fee for that. So I think implementing a fee for credit card use to recover at least 25 to 30 grand or something like that. I think those are pretty easy too. And I also think that the departmental input that was referred to before as sort of a good administrative practice should be implemented as quickly as possible. I don't think those are necessarily, we need to agendize any of those issues. Just do them, I think, especially since there's consensus. The ones that I think do need agendizing would be the Defensible Space Program, because we do need to get input from the public on that if we're going to change the rules, which I think we probably should. And of course, the traffic light at Old La Honda Road, that's a big expense. It affects a lot of people. And I think that that probably requires a public hearing and gives Lewis enough time to get his plans lined up there about what what it's going to cost and the timing of that. And we could allocate the funds to make sure that it happens, because I think it's essential, as everyone has said. Kite Hill, I'm certainly concerned about that, whether the town does it or whether there's nothing to say we can't. I know it's a $60,000 request. We could cap it at 50 or something like that too, but I think we ultimately may have to make a change because the gentleman who does it won't be doing it forever. And we're ultimately going to have to make some accommodation for future use of that and future maintenance of it, which I certainly support. The one that actually has the longest timeline, which probably is the least urgent as far as I'm concerned, is the sheriff's contract. It's the biggest hit, but also we just signed the contract and we've got time to run here and we are being covered. And there's not a whole lot we can do about it for the coming however many months or years it is. But I do think we need to look into it and see about better managing that system. We've talked before about how often the deputies are here and what they're actually doing, and to see if we're getting our money's worth or if they're elsewhere and not. I happen to be pretty happy with the sheriff's department performance, but there's a management issue here and a fiduciary responsibility we have to make sure we're getting our $3.6 million worth from the deputies and from the sheriff's department. But I think that if we put together a subcommittee to kind of take a look at it and look at other alternatives and things like that, I'm not sure that they're viable, but I'm certainly not opposed to looking into them. But coming up with that and seeing if there are things we could do. We've talked about, we used to share it with Portola Valley and maybe get some sort of a bigger discount. Maybe we could expand that to other cities that use the sheriff services like San Carlos. I just don't know, but I think that that's something that a committee could look into. It's a much longer term project and certainly less urgent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Abarish.
Yes, I think, I'm so far I'm in agreement with everything everyone said. I think Old La Honda needs to be a top priority to keep that light running at all times. I think if we don't have it, I think there is a real risk of a serious accident and somebody, going off the cliff. I know the last time it happened, there was a tow truck that went off the edge, and I remember seeing the vehicle there, and luckily nobody, I think, was injured severely, but if it happened again, I would hate to see it. So, but I think we're all in agreement, hopefully, on that. And I agree that I would be very interested in seeing what the alternatives are if the road could be expanded, but in some way where we'd actually have 2 lanes or something. So, thank you, Lewis, for that. For the sheriff, this, it came up when we were negotiating the contract. That I remember we talked about it. The same points that Dick was raising, that are we overspending? Is there some place to right size this? Because I think we currently have more police force than Portola Valley, even though we're about the same size. And so I think I agree that it would make sense to have a task force look at options of either seeing if we could share a contract with Portola Valley, if it makes sense to, you know, reduce, do we need it? Do we need the extra motorcycle? Could we move resources around to where they're being utilized at the right times instead of, like I think right now, the extra sheriff's deputies, like sometime during the middle of the week, which I don't know if we really need that. Maybe if we cut it down to one and had them on more weekend, or I'm not sure. But I think totally worth exploring. And I agree, that's the biggest, obviously, that's the biggest single item.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we're all aligned that a task force on the sheriff's services is a good idea. I mean, we can form a task force tonight. I certainly would love to be involved in just evaluating the services and seeing if we can, seeing to make sure that we're getting the value that that we deserve out of our biggest number one line item. So could we form that task force? I don't think we need to wait on that if everyone's in support.
I'll just mention, when we looked at this last go around, we also ran into, I wouldn't call it union issues, but when you have a motorcycle and you have to cover a certain amount of time, you actually need basically 2 motorcycles. And we were trying to see if we get flex up time on the weekends when, everybody comes into town or not. And we got shot down pretty hard by the sheriff's department on that at that time. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad to hear that you're interested. Is there any, we can have a 2-person task force if there's anyone else that would be interested. Is there anyone interested in being on that task force with Councilmember Wall?
Be happy to do it.
Great.
Yep, okay. Well, then we can certainly make that motion in a minute. I'll just mention the Kite Hill thing just to also comment on the public comment on that. For me personally, I don't have a problem with the 60K. I have a problem with the overage. So it's almost like it's a contract management issue, and that's as much on us as the provider. I don't think we were giving guidance, and I think, I mean, it's one thing to spend 60. It's another thing to be 70% over budget at 100 and be surprised by it. And so I do think it's really a contract management issue more than anything. And if we could, I think that is I think about what landscaping costs and so forth. And I know this is a higher end situation than that, but I know it's 14 acres, but it does seem very, very high. And we've gotten a lot of public comment on that over time, just to emphasize even Ms. Hansen's comments recently on that item. Okay. Do you have the direction you need from us except for this task force, ad hoc task force issue?
Yes, I do. I have increased process controls and come back to council soon before the August recess to hear what has been put in place and what's coming forward. Old La Honda, we need to agendize to hear about additional proposals as far as road expansion or cleanup options. Defensible space, bring back a revised program and agendize that, which will include a legal analysis and discuss different options as far as caps, sliding scale, et cetera. And then we can bring forward research on the PARS account if you'd like that to come forward. And then the credit card fee, we would bring forward to council to review the options for that as well.
Okay. Some of those might make their way onto consent, but yeah, and others won't. And Jean, this idea of tonight forming it's a non-agendized item. Can we just do it? It's a minority group of the council and we can just say,
Yes, you may.
we need to vote on it, or can we just say that that was the direction given?
You can just give that direction.
Okay, direction still given. Okay. Anything else that we need to talk about on the budget?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for leaning in during this time. We appreciate it very much. Okay, we will close item B, and we didn't lose a single Zoom attendee, so there's a lot of interest in this next topic. So back to old business. This is a continuation from the April 28th meeting on the items we didn't get to, like parking and land use and gathering spaces. So Sage, do I hand this off to you, or do we hand it directly off to these folks?
You just captured it correctly. This is a continuation of the item, and we're going to turn it over to Troy and Aaron.
Very good. Welcome back. Yeah, I think we're just going to take a 2-minute break. We'll just adjourn for 2 minutes. Looks like we've lost a council member or two here for a second. Okay, Troy, we'll hand it off to you. And my understanding is we're going to go through your full presentation, then open up public comment and, well, we'll ask questions and then open up public comment and so forth. But the entire presentation at once versus section by section.
Sounds good to me. All right. So, good evening, council members. Good to see you all again. Pleased to be back to talk again about the Town Center Area Plan update. So, as you know, tonight is the continuation of the meeting that we had on in late April, where we really focused the whole conversation on transportation. So tonight we'll cover the remaining 3 topics, just as important. We'll talk about some concepts, some strategies and policies for parking, land use, and public spaces. These ideas and these concepts, they really emerged collectively from our process so far, from our team, from the staff, the community, and the CAC. So we've really compiled all these ideas. So just as a kind of context setting for tonight, we're looking for council to provide us with preliminary direction on these strategies, as you did on the last meeting, before we go ahead and share these ideas with the community as part of our next phase of engagement. So try to keep in mind that this isn't our final decision-making point. We want to, kind of remain open-minded as we're going through this plan update process. But we're really looking for council to give us really important additional context and concerns and considerations that pertain to these strategies before we go ahead and sort of roll them out for the broader community. So I'll go ahead and go through these 3 topics, and then, as the mayor said, we'll pause for comment, and then we'll look for discussion. So I'll really jump right into it tonight. The only thing I'll kind of preface with is just this slide about key outcomes, just as kind of a refresher, kind of set ourselves in the mindset of what we want to get out of this process. And really, in a lot of ways, the first one is kind of the goal is a consensus building effort around a shared vision. And then everything else, 2 through 12, is kind of an implementation, a detail of that vision. But this is really a visioning process that will result in a policy and vision document. So let's jump into parking, a really hot topic. We heard a lot about it in our pop-ups, our stakeholder meetings, in the survey. It was constant conversation about parking. What are the issues with parking that we heard? The bottom line is that there's not enough parking in the town center during certain times of day. These peaks are usually the lunch times and longer times on the weekends. The parking in the town-owned or public lots is not managed, which is to say there's not a time limit or an enforcement mechanism or enforcement body. The on-street parking that used to be on Woodside Road was removed by Caltrans, which reduced the supply in the town centers. Folks who work at some of the business in the town centers park in parking spaces here, which is understandable, but contributes again to the supply issue. We don't have any public transit or any type of a circulator or a shuttle as an alternative means to get to the town center. And an issue that we heard about through the CAC and others was that bikers like to park in the town hall lot just outside, often for several hours or a whole day, and those, again, takes up spaces. So you have a lot of conflicts over the parking spaces. So we came up with a couple of ideas. Here's 7 ideas that we kind of rolled out for the CAC. These are potential solutions. The most popular idea that we talked about was to better utilize and better manage the spaces that we do have by instituting more enforcement. And the focus in the conversation was about the public lots, since those are where the town has the most control. But the idea of supporting or otherwise implementing enforcement on private lots was also popular. Shared parking, very popular. There was concerns raised about if we do enforcement, could that result in neighborhood spillover? So there was a conversation about that. Some of the less popular ideas were parking meters. Those were not very well received in the CAC. And then we talked a little bit about parking requirements. Would we consider reducing those requirements? And we talked about it in two different ways. One, for uses that don't attract too much traffic. Those are, generally like shops or retail. And then there's also foot traffic, high foot traffic uses like restaurants primarily. And sort of not too surprisingly, there was more openness to being a little more forgiving towards offices and shops and parking requirements rather than restaurants. Some other ideas we talked about with the CAC, these are a bit more kind of physically oriented ideas. The more popular idea, which we touched on last time, was about adding back parking spaces, marked parking spaces to Woodside Road, primarily around the commercial businesses like Little Store and Village Hub. So that was very popular. Another popular idea that kind of emerged out of the CAC that we didn't have on our list initially was signage. Signage specifically oriented towards parking, making it easier to know where to park and easier to know where you're supposed to park as a member of a different type of user case. And then what are the rules around parking? So all of that was part of this signage discussion that came up. Some ideas that were not didn't get a lot of traction were to do a shuttle bus or to build an off-site parking lot, which you could combine also with a shuttle bus. Both of those ideas were kind of seen with a lot of skepticism in the CAC. We also talked about enhanced transit, Samtrans, Waymo, other alternatives like that also came up as part of this discussion. So, and again, just as a reminder, I'll kind of go through all these ideas and then we'll come back to these slides and we'll have a discussion about these ideas in particular. But what I want to hear from you are kind of which ideas amongst this list, you think are really strong, have a lot of potential. Are there ideas we should kind of take off of the table and stop pursuing? And are there any other ideas that you'd like to kind of throw into the mix? So we'll do this for each of these three topics. So we'll come back. Well, let's shift to land use. So we broke this out into both the commercial side, so businesses and shops, and then the other side, the residential, the housing side. So we'll take them each separately, one at a time. Some of the issues around land use are, kind of when you look at the town center, you see some uses missing that you would see in other downtowns. There are a lot of regulations, zoning, the size of the parcels, restrictions that are both policy and physical in nature that constrain what property owners can do in the town center. That includes building heights being limited by the ballot measure. Likewise, adaptive reuse, which is to say you convert an office or a shop into a different type of use, such as a housing use, not allowed at this time. We've heard it's really hard to afford to live here if you work in the school or local businesses here. Just as a kind of reminder, we're here because of the housing element. But in our initial survey, we did find a lot of kind of split of views on this topic. So we anticipate, I think, a lot of robust debate about this topic. It was basically evenly split in our initial survey. So as far as commercial businesses, we tried to think about what is missing in the town center. What could we add? The CAC had a lot of thoughts about that. Some of the businesses that were favored in the CAC, the fast casual restaurant type, a type that's sort of missing right now. Yoga, fitness studio, also very popular. Pharmacy and urgent care, I know in the past that has had some success and some not success, but that was an idea that came up. Ice cream boba shop, also there on the list. So those were the top businesses. But in fairness, there was a lot of discussion about how the town doesn't directly, control who goes into business spaces. So we should be cognizant that there are limits to how much we can prescribe with this policy process. And then just to keep in mind the market constraints here. This is a small kind of retail market trade area. So that's a realistic constraint on what we can attract here. And there was generally consensus that anything that we would want to add to this space should be a local oriented and not a regional tourist oriented type of business. So some of the ideas that we talked about are how are some ways in which we can reduce the barriers, the regulatory barriers or other barriers to attract the types of businesses that are desired that we just talked about, the boba and the other types of businesses. So some of the ideas are, and these are, you know, sort of a bit wonky policy ideas, but it's making conditional use permits easier. You could either make them not necessary by making a use simply by right and not require a CUP, or you could make a CUP sort of a less onerous process. You could streamline approvals for adaptive reuse to help businesses kind of turn over. And then as we talked about parking requirements, you could reduce parking requirements for businesses we really want to attract. And these ideas, generally overall, the CAC was very well received. The overall notion of flexibility for commercial business owners was really, really well received at the CAC. So shifting to housing, we kind of started at a high level. Just the opening question is, should housing be allowed in town center? And overall, the majority of the CAC was in favor of that, especially if it's kind of well designed. I think that was a really understated part of this. Yes, the yes be allowed, but with the right design and the right type of, you know, kind of orientation and character. But overall, the CAC was supportive of housing in the town center. When we ask specifically when we say housing, what do we mean? What type and scale and character? Overall, the strongest support was for a 2-story type of scale. There was also support for 3 stories. There was also support for just the adaptive reuse, which is to say keeping the existing buildings and turning them over inside. But the overall strongest sort of support was for a 2-story character. But there was a very mixed, robust conversation. There was a lot of support for keeping retail in a mixed use format. That we want to keep the ground floor of buildings active with active retail. There was a lot of no interest in a large scale type of apartment or a condo building. There is a strong contingent of support on the CAC for allowing sort of some medium scale, what we might call missing middle or medium density housing along Woodside Road as part of this overall concept. And we can talk a little bit more about that. So now I'll just go through a couple of examples, just walking through what 2-story and 3-story housing could look like and feel like in the town center, just to kind of get us all thinking about it in a visual way. So here's an example of a 2-story townhouse. You have 2 examples here. You could have the parking in the back in this example. So you have a very nice frontage character here. Here's another example where, in this case, it's a townhouse, but the parking is in the front. So you would access the parking below grade or basically, you know, tucked under your unit. In this case, you know, you still have a 2-story product, but you can park it very easily underground because the parking is going to be a big challenge for whatever housing. If housing is developed here, parking will be a big challenge. Here's a nice example of a mixed use. So those were residential only examples. Here's a nice example of a mixed use. Sometimes this gets called a live work or a shop house, where you basically have just 2 stories. 1 story is a residential unit over top of an office or a shop. Sometimes those are connected. Sometimes those are separate tenants. You can do it in a variety of different ways, but the overall kind of character of that is a very nice walkable 2-story kind of shop house. These examples are ones in Carmel and ones in Tiburon. And so we thought those were good examples. So stepping up 1 more floor to 3 stories, here's what 3-story townhomes might look like or feel like. You could, again, with the parking, you could tuck the parking under the units, or you might do surface parking, depending on the density. And here's our final example. This is going up 1 more floor, a 3-story shop house or mixed use configuration where you have 2 stories of housing unit or condo above a retail shop. You see this prototype a lot in a lot of sort of small town downtowns, where you have folks living above a shop or a store or a restaurant. Some of these examples I think are from South Lake Tahoe. You have kind of this rural, more rustic look to some of these examples. So we thought these were good examples. One sort of design consideration here is that even if we do consider allowing 3 stories, we could put in step backs, in the 3rd story. stepping that back a certain distance so that you don't have as much sort of sense of that 3-story scale. So there are options here that you could do to kind of play with that 3rd story. So just shifting gears a little bit, the first part of the conversation was really about, would we want to allow housing on privately owned properties? The other flip side of that conversation is there are these kind of 2 sites that are publicly owned within the town center, the Village Hill and this parcel we're on right now, the Town Hall parcel. So naturally those came up as possibilities for doing housing. And we discussed that with the CAC, and overall, I think about 2/3 of the CAC was supportive of exploring it on one of the 2 sites. I think there was some who were strongly opposed, and I think we'll hear some strong thoughts about Village Hill. But overall, I think there was some openness on the CAC to look at whether housing on these sites could be pursued. And obviously, the town has more control over these sites than the privately owned sites. Just want to acknowledge there was also a lot of discussion in the CAC about properties that could be potentially suitable for housing that were sort of not within that initial boundary, but were part of the expanded kind of look that we took along Woodside Road in both directions. So some of those sites that came up were the Goat Hill site, which is just across, at the west corner of Haciendas and Woodside Road. Obviously a large vacant site, but it is privately owned. Across the street, there's the site on the other side of Haciendas, which is also mostly vacant, though it has some drainage issues. 2 other parcels were frequently mentioned, the parcel adjacent to the fire station, that we understand there's plans for some fire station facilities, but nonetheless, then also a parcel adjacent to the school, to the tennis courts, which was just purchased by the school district. So that does offer some opportunities for housing on that site. But just wanted to acknowledge there was a lot of discussion about these additional parcels, and that these parcels start to form the outline of what might be, again, as I discussed, this middle density kind of approach of an overlay or an additional zoning allowance for parcels that, like these that front Woodside Road, close to town center. They have the good sewer service that's available in this central district. So that's an idea that has kind of it's come out of these discussions about housing sites beyond the traditional footprint of the town center. So again, we'll come back to this, but kind of we're talking through which of these ideas we think have the best potential. Which one of these do we, if any, do we want to kind of take off the table? And then is there something we forgot to put onto the table? Shifting to public space, gathering spaces, and urban design, really exciting topic. So some of the issues are that outdoor dining, which used to be more present, is now sorely missed ever since it went away. Really one of the more unanimous findings across the CAC, the survey, the pop-ups, everyone really missed outdoor dining. There's no one true public space or sort of signature plaza to gather or to picnic. Measure A, we have not fully implemented that. The vision for a gazebo right outside of the town hall. A lack of programming was brought up by folks, with respect to teens, especially not having events that would draw one to the town center. There's no community center or no teen center. And there are not that many public amenities in and around the town center. We don't have bathrooms or water fountains or seating areas. So we developed a preliminary list of possible gathering spaces, and we talked these over with the CAC. And as I mentioned, outdoor dining overwhelmingly was number 1. A community center was also very popular. Farmers market. Then some of the lesser popular ideas were the Village Hill Picnic Center, and then the public space that we talked a lot about last meeting by the Roberts Market, interestingly. So here's just kind of a look at where some of these things might physically take space within the town center. Outdoor dining has a couple of different locations, but the one that I think a lot of folks talked about was the one that used to be in front of Bucks and the Village Bakery. Then the public space that we talked about last time, potential picnic area, the Measure A gazebo, the farmer's market location. So just kind of thinking about these spaces throughout the town center. So in association with gathering spaces, we also talked about how can we make the town center look nicer aesthetically, kind of from a design standpoint. So the most popular choice for the CAC was more landscaping, especially native planting, new street trees, very popular. And then kind of building off of the earlier discussion around parking and signage, kind of using gateway treatments as both a kind of identity and character making piece, but also a functional way to help direct people around the town center in the right way. So those were very popular, assuming that signage or those treatments were very carefully calibrated to the character here, the rural equestrian character. That's really important, that whatever signage or landscaping we do is really sensitive and appropriate to this context. So again, here are kind of the ideas that we'll talk through and see what you think. A bunch of various suggested outdoor spaces and urban design treatments. You let me know if you think any of the ideas should be off the table or anything's missing. And that will be our third topic. So just to wrap up kind of the presentation, let me just describe where we go next after tonight. So to kind of remind ourselves at the end of this process, we're hoping that the council will adopt an updated town center area plan as a standalone policy document. That document will contain a number of things, but it'll include like the preferred concepts that we agree on for various key transportation improvements, programs or policies or strategies around parking that we agree on, the priorities for investing in public spaces, the policies for commercial use and potential residential use, and then action items that the town will follow up on over the coming years. The town will also certify the EIR as part of this process, which will include review of impacts from some scenarios that we'll look at. And then potentially, depending on where we go with the policy direction, ballot measures could be considered after adoption to implement the vision of this plan. But that will, of course, depend on where we go with direction. Then after tonight, immediately we will begin our engagement with the community. We'll have a survey that will roll out within a week or so. So we'll have pop-ups, we'll have an open house, we'll have the survey going for a few months. Then we'll meet back with the CAC to discuss kind of what we heard from the community about these ideas. And then we'll meet back with the council to kind of lock in our approach to CEQA. And of course, we'll share what we've heard from the community about these ideas. And then finally, once we decide and confirm our CEQA approach, we'll initiate the EIR and we'll go from there. So with that, hand it back to the mayor.
Great, thank you so much. I know this is laid out to go right into public comment, and that's probably actually the best thing to do before we discuss, but does anybody have any immediate questions for Troy? No?
Question?
Quick question, okay.
Is there any consideration given to, I noticed in some of your slides there where you identified other spaces where we could possibly put in housing, and those four, I forgot, Haciendas and Goat Hill, and those things, about relocating the town, this building and the building next door. Was there any discussion of that?
I do believe there was at least one member of CSC who brought that idea up. I don't know that it was widely discussed, but it did get mentioned. If that's an idea that we should pursue further, I'm happy to
No,
go
I
there.
mentioned
But
it because of the fire station, and I mean, which is a pretty impressive facility now, and
right,
space is available next to it, and
yeah,
this is such an attractive area and big area that's being taken up, like government bureaucracy.
and it's not like the
It's
town
worth-
center hasn't moved before. So
Yes, yeah, of course, yeah, and twice actually, 3 times. I'm sorry. So anyway, I just That was my only question. You can design the new one. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from council?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Have we done you were going to do a parking survey, I believe, at one point. You said you were going to do, is that underway or completed?
That's right. Yeah, we conducted a survey of the use of the public town lots, basically to see how those were used. We did complete that survey last fall, and sort of at a high level, the findings were that around 10 to 12% of the spaces were occupied by bikers, bicyclists. That was the finding. So I think what I took away from the survey was that the bicycle parking is a real phenomenon. There are bicycles that park there for extended periods of time. It may not be as, it's not half of the parking lot, but it's a small but not insignificant number of parking spaces that are taken up by bikers. I think it confirmed that we'd like to find an approach to managing that parking lot, because that would help address that issue.
Absolutely, I agree with that one. Have you done any study or documented how many parking spaces exist in the downtown area?
Yeah, we showed that at, I can see if I have that slide. That was in my very first presentation. Off the top of my head, I want to say the number was around 640 spaces, something like that. We did count them up. Most of them are off street, but it was something around 600 and something spaces. So we did count those. Yeah.
And some of the proposals you had was to do more sides on the street parking than what we're doing right now, like on Woodside Road. And I'd like to have you come back the next time around with how many more spaces could we get to, maybe 700, if we did the following things. And then my last thing is the property right below Town Hall here that is targeted as a gazebo. Have we looked at that as potential for multi-story housing?
Yeah. I mean, we're veering into all of the later discussion, which it's just fine. But yes, that was part of our previous our look.
Let's talk about gazebos and
so part of the discussion, I think, would be what's the most appropriate use of that site. We have shown it as a potential gazebo here, but then in the site or the discussion around housing, we indicate that it could also be a housing site. So I think we're still open to idea. And then now just, Councilmember Gold brought up the idea of moving the town center. So I think there's a lot in play in this site right here.
Okay.
I think it's still very open for discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we will move on to public comment, and I think we'll start in the Zoom room. Mr. Ersted.
Yes, council members, thank you. I wanted to skip my prepared remarks and address Councilmember Gold's comment just recently. I think that is a very wise idea to keep in mind. No certainty, but having that alternative of using the current location for town hall and the adjoining building, the room you're in currently, as housing might work quite well. So I want to commend Councilmember Gold for that comment. I think I've written a letter that lays out my concerns regarding land use and parking. I'd encourage the town in town center to look at public parking as a town asset. And I think here control or more control is warranted. You have a use by outsiders, not residents, not property owners, not tenants, taking up spots where alternatives readily exist, whether on Woodside Road down at the Park and Ride or up on Kenyatta Road There are ready alternatives. These are people driving in from outside. Woodside is a highly desirable, arguably one of the most desirable biking places in the United States, and it brings in a lot of people. We have a limited number of spots. That 600 plus number applies when you count up all spots, public and private, when you include Kenyatta Corners, Roberts, as well as the primary town center. Third comment I want to make is with regards to housing on undeveloped parcels. I think the town would be really wise to watch out for compliance with current state stormwater low impact discharge requirements. I can attest these requirements are very, very strict. They are very expensive to comply with. They take significant civil engineering work. And the town is somewhat unique in that it lacks stormwater facilities. So you're relying on drainage into natural water courses like Dry Creek. And you got to be really, really careful when laying out new structures, new developments, that you don't impact that natural water course in ways that don't comply. I can tell you from experience, the state of California and Sonoma County and its primary city of Santa Rosa, spent years negotiating those provisions with applicability to those communities inside Sonoma County, including city of Santa Rosa. My goodness gracious, it's tough. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Any other public comments? Mr. Lubin.
Steve Lubin. I know that Richard's been concerned about maintaining the left turn lane to get into the parking spaces along his properties and up to the Gilbert's properties on Woodside Road. I think that should be balanced, and I think it's actually much more important for us to kind of take control of Woodside Road. There's no, people say they want to keep the rural, rustic nature of the town center, but that section of road is neither rural nor rustic and was really, made quite inhospitable by Caltrans widening. The removal of the parking along the north side, I don't think, excuse me, Troy, but I don't think there was Caltrans that initiated that. The town initiated it at a time when the pub was very busy and opened onto Woodside Road and people were crossing the road. And actually the town council removed that parking. So I think, replacing that parking would be a really low-hanging fruit to get more parking in town. And that probably requires removal of the left turn lane. In conjunction with that, the pavement could be narrowed there. We could have entrance features starting at haciendas that slow people down, perhaps the roundabout there that's been suggested, so that people come into that section of road at 20 miles an hour, not 50 miles an hour like they do now. The circulation committee, before my time on it, recommended a free turn lane on Woodside Road when you're coming off of Whiskey Hill, that you could have a center lane that you could turn into. I think that idea actually just facilitates people speeding into town and accepts it. And I don't think we should accept that. I think we should have some traffic calming measures coming into town that get people down to 20 miles an hour. Then it would be much easier to turn into these parking spots. People would get to a speed where they're kind of personally negotiating in traffic. And then that brings me to the intersection of Woodside and Kenyatta Road. And I think, the direction the town has been taking is to just leave it alone. And I think, that's just not feasible. That intersection doesn't work. It needs some kind of radical transformation to start working better. I was originally quite opposed to roundabouts there because I was using the Stanford roundabouts as a model. The consultants have said, much smaller ones are possible. And I think using that, there's some possibilities to fix that intersection in a way, maybe using roundabouts where you don't have to stop at all driving through town center, but you're going 20 miles an hour. And I really like practically all of the housing proposals, and my time's up.
You. Other comments? There is, but there'd be a second bite at the apple, so we'll see if there's any first bites yet.
As two members of the History Committee here tonight, we vehemently object to moving this building. It was so well, the whole complex was so well designed by Esherick Dodgy Holmes and Holmesy Dodge and Davis. That's right. Thank you. And it really is an integral part of town center and masterfully done to have the staff buildings complement this, but not detract from it. It's on the National Register. So please, let's take that one off the table, right, Leanne? I mean, I'm speaking for two members of the committee, but there are other places and consultants have discussed those. I think at one point, Dick Brown suggested looking at some kind of institutional housing on the Hill and Village Hill, thank you. And that wouldn't require as much parking because it would be people who, would be like a facility. I like that idea. I think you presented a long time ago, but I don't think we're there yet, I guess is what I'm saying. I mean, there's still a lot of loose ends and the consultants have done a great job, but there's still other ideas on the table that I think need to be looked at more specifically and maybe not implemented right away, but certainly be part of a long range plan. None of this is going to happen right away. So let's keep our minds open.
Oops. Gilbert.
I'm trying to absorb all this. I don't like change very much. Don't move this building anywhere, by the way. I'll double with her. What I don't understand is why, basically, this may sound stupid at this point of the game, but why the hell are we doing this? Are we trying to make this place bigger? Are we trying to make it not so rural? Are we, I just don't understand. I don't think this is really a terrible place to live right now. And I think it's beautiful here. And there are always going to be some things that we could do to make it easier for people to walk around town and stuff. I'm all for that, safe walking around town. But to make it a place where we're going to attract more people to come here and look over the town, wow, and all this, I mean, I own stuff that, we could probably make more money by doing it, but like a restaurant or something like that. But I like it low key. I don't need it now. I don't want it now. I just want to see Woodside stay the old town feeling that it had at some point. And I see that going out the window here. I really do. And I mean, we have 5.5 acres. I have horses. I have chickens. I have, all kinds of stuff. But so I like it. And I think other people like it too. The things that you can't do. I was born and raised in San Francisco, so I didn't have these things. Didn't have a horse. I wanted a horse there, but my father said, no, you have to take that horse back. Doesn't work here. So I just don't like the direction we're going in, but I'm going to stay with it and I'll have more to say as I see it opening up. But there's a lot of things that are so different that it seems to me it's going to attract a lot more people. And I don't think that we're really set up for that, to have that. It's going to be overloaded. Where's the parking spaces? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's hard enough for the people that live here to have a family come and visit them or something, and sometimes they have to park in the parking lot. It's too much. I guess I'm just too old now. I'd strike that. So somebody tell me why we're doing this. I want to know why we're doing this. Why are we going to spend? I know the state must be putting their stupid ass ideas in here, but how can we avoid what the best we can and try to keep us bucolic and small and special here? I don't want to lose our specialness in this town. I think I've lived here 60 years now, even though I'm only 45. I don't know how that happened, I don't know. I want to keep it small and kind of rural and just funky. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Leanne. We're all trying to figure out how to do that too. I mean, it's just the reason it's happening now. It's been a couple decades since we took a look at it, and more acutely, it's because it's a part of the housing element. It's due to HCD as part of our mid-cycle review early next year. So that's why it's happening right now. Are there any other first-time comments? Then, Richard, since your name was evoked, we're going to give you the rare second bite at the apple.
Yes, quick comment on Steve's comment. I think we covered that topic, circulation and transportation, at the end of April. To us, those parking spots on the north side of the buildings in that stretch, central stretch of town center, are absolutely important, particularly if we want to, as a town, continue to try to attract retail. In our building, primary building, the bigger building, we've had, of course, Chase Bank, but earlier a dentist for a long time and the dentist's son for a long time, a barber and a doctor upstairs as well as downstairs. Parking, having private parking spaces along Woodside Road, which have existed now for many decades, absolutely key to keeping retail as an option for that first story. Converting those spaces over, whether improving them as building add-ons or additions, and converting all the parking on the south side of Woodside Road to public spaces would likely discourage any sort of retail there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comments? We go tit for tat for a while. Do you have a 1-minute follow-up?
Yeah, I
Okay.
wasn't proposing getting rid of the parking. I do think that if that parking were shared, even if it were still private parking, if it were shared, there would be opportunity to have more available parking, because as it is now, each individual property needs its handicap parking space. If it were shared, there would only have to be 1 out of 25 parking spaces be a handicap parking space. So I think could actually increase the amount of public parking spaces. And I think if traffic were slower on the road, the access would not be a problem.
Okay, thank you. I think, can I get a little guidance? We continue with public comment, even though people are taking second and third bites at the apple.
It's your choice.
Okay, third bite, Richard.
Yeah, quick comment. Again, these spots would be public spots, not under the control of any private property owner. And so there's good reason to believe that without constraints and control over those public spots, they'd be occupied, Steve. They'd be used, and not by the tenants, the visitors, the guests, but by others. This concept's been around since the Woodside Road, Whiskey Hill Road Parking Assessment District, a district which burdened the town with significant financial obligations and failed in part because of this concept along the south side of Woodside Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments? All right, maybe we'll get the two of you in a room to hash that out. Okay, we'll close public comment and move on to council discussion and direction. Anyone want to kick things off? Yes.
Let me make a process suggestion. I think one, it would be really helpful if we could see for each section, like see the questions for council. Can we take it topic by topic so we're not just like, okay.
Yeah, that was the proposed approach.
Great.
Well, let's start with parking. Any thoughts on parking?
Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Brown.
Yes, and I guess my first comment is I think you're underestimating, or your research underestimated, the number of parking spaces occupied by bicyclers. I think any of the property owners around here would say this parking lot is full before we even get here many days. And they all have bike racks on the back. And so I don't think 10% is a representative number of how many spaces are occupied by bikers. And that would lead me to believe that if they are a lot more significant, that some really solid ideas about how to restrict the time and the persons using it perhaps would be very, very useful.
Okay. Others?
Yeah, I can go.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of good ideas here, and I generally agree with the what I think is the consensus or the general feeling from the advisory committee. The notion of parking enforcement. Well, I'll start with parking enforcement on town lots. I think that's pretty easy and a good idea. The idea of parking enforcement on private lots has been the topic of a lot of conversation. We had a town ad hoc subcommittee that looked at this for a while or tried to facilitate conversations around this. I don't know what the willingness of the commercial property owners is on this topic, but I think it would be wonderful if there's parking enforcement on town lots, if we could have similar parking enforcement on private lots. I think having that consistency town-wide in the commercial center would be useful to the public. Just, you wouldn't have to think, oh, am I on a private lot or a town lot? Like consistent parking enforcement in our town center, I think is a great idea and would help people understand kind of what the enforcement is. I also heard some suggestions around signage. I think signage is important. If you're going to have enforcement, you need to have signage. And I really like the idea of creating new parking on Woodside Road. I think that, I'm not an expert here, but I think that might have an additional impact of slowing down traffic, which I think would be a win-win. And I would look at it, not just near the little store. I think that's a great idea, but like the entire length of what we've identified as the town center, because we are parking constrained. So if there's opportunities to find areas for additional parking, that would, increase our optionality in other areas. So yeah, those are my thoughts on parking.
Any other thoughts?
Generally agree. I think enforcement seems like really low hanging fruit and and I like the idea of opening up more parking along Woodside Road. We can allow make changes to allow it. There it is. But I think parking enforcement is probably the easiest.
I wanted to, I've got a few comments about parking. One, I think I'm very mindful of Leanne Gilbert and Christine Roberts and Richard Ersted, the protecting our commercial interests here. The comment was made, I think I made it actually, but the comment was made at a previous meeting that one day we're going to wake up and we're going to find out that Christine has closed Roberts Market and it's going to be, condominiums and office buildings because it just, the business model doesn't work anymore. And everybody's going to go, oh, shoot. Well, that's bad. What are we going to do now? Are we going to bring it back? It'll be too late. And, we see that all the time. Drugstores close and restaurants close. And it's tough these days to do it. And parking is a big part of that. And we've heard that from all three of the people that I mentioned before. So I think protecting those interests. But I do want to mention something, kind of one of my pet issues here that I've brought up for a long time. And that's, we're sort of complicated by legal issues and what's going on at Kenyatta Corners right now and lawsuits and try to expand parking and those sorts of things. And I made the point before that during the pandemic, we expanded outdoor dining and we added 120 diners and we didn't add parking. And so the fact that, during the last 3 or 4 years, just before I came on the council, that there was a lot of problem with parking at Kenyatta Corners. Well, duh, we added 120 diners, 60 seats outdoors in front of Bucks and 60 seats in front of the bakery. And we, it's not magic that suddenly people couldn't find a parking space. And my point at the time was, could we just enforce the conditional use permit? And if they've got 120 seats outside, let's remove 120 seats inside and parking should go back to where it was. I don't know if that's the case, but it was certainly worth running that little experiment. And of course, the town council at the time refused. I brought it up several times to the town attorney and to the town council, and they had reasonable excuses, but they were excuses. We didn't do it. So now we're in this draconian mode of, we eliminated outdoor dining and there's kind of a little bit of a war going on, and it's very unfortunate. But I think that that's sort of one of the issues that we've got is there enough parking? Well, now, it's still a problem, but it's less of a problem than it was when there were those, what do they call them? Parklets in front of those two buildings that consume spaces and added a lot of patrons. So we can't ignore that. But I think we do need more parking. The two biggest constituencies, I think, that are variables that we can play with. I don't, people who go to the restaurants want to park there. People who go to the Pioneer want to park there. People who want to come to the town center want to park there. But there are two groups that don't necessarily need to park there who come here. And those two groups are employees and bike riders. And those are big numbers. This isn't like a rounding error. Those are big, big constituencies. And I think I mentioned, it may have been at one of the meetings that we had, is that rather than try to patrol out or enforce out bike riders they're going to park here. If there's an open spot, they're going to park there, and we all see them lined up here and taking their bicycles off, and they consume 20, 30, 40, 50 parking spaces, and usually the best ones too. And they can use those spaces on a weekend all day, and nobody does anything about it. So my suggestion was, rather than trying to disincentivize them to park there, let's find a place that incentivizes them to go there. And so perhaps if there was a really state-of-the-art lot for bike riders to go, they're getting in their bikes and they're riding anyway. They want to ride, but find a state-of-the-art place that we could put them, whether it's on Kenyatta Road or Woodside Road or out on Whiskey Hill. I'm not going to identify the location, but find a state-of-the-art where they can work on their bicycles, where there's air, where there's repair areas, where there's lockup facilities where they can where it's going to be safe and nice, instead of having to weave in and out of traffic and those sort of things. Incentivize them to go somewhere proactively where they say, I don't want to park downtown. I'd rather park there with all my friends, and we'll get to ride down Whiskey Hill, or we'll get to ride down, someplace that's a little more, convenience for them is probably less of an issue. That's bike riders. That's a big number, and that really impacts our riding. The other one is perhaps with the employees, it's a pretty big number. I don't know how many you have at the Pioneer or how many they have at Roberts or Kenyatta Corners, or Town Center for that matter. But if we could find a remote lot that had a shuttle that went back and forth and brought people in, kind of a pain in the neck. I know I don't particularly like it either, getting on shuttles, but it is a way of getting people out of this area and creating more parking spaces. So there are opportunities there. Just trying to think a little bit out of the box here. It's something to throw out there, and then everybody can shoot it down immediately afterwards. But there are opportunities to get two big constituent groups outside for positive reasons, not as punishment, but make it attractive, especially for bike riders, which is a big number, to go someplace else. I think that's it. That's enough on parking.
Okay. Maybe I'll go next. I'll just say that parking expansion is, just to echo that, absolutely critical. And we are significantly constrained, and we might end up significantly constrained if things don't settle the right way. And I do suspect, to echo Councilmember Gold's comments, that over the next 5 to 10 years, I don't think people appreciate the long-term ramifications of that in this environment, that the sustainability of the services that are offered downtown are going to just disappear. So I completely agree with that. I like the enforcement a lot. I don't like the meters. I'm on the off-site parking, I thought that was actually a charming idea with the bicycles. I was just thinking I'm sure other bicyclists on the call right now are, you think about Tanitas Creek and that little red shed out there. There are certain places that you go on your bike because there are sort of replenishment stations and things like that that make it worth sort of doing on your long ride. And so that's a very interesting idea to pursue. The area I would differ on is the idea of remote parking for employees. And I mean, I've heard this, I mean, as recall, 6 years ago, these were our essential workers we put on a pedestal, right? And now all of a sudden we're trying to figure out if there can be remote parking in a shuttle. These are people with kids in school, and when somebody gets sick and they got to wait an hour for a shuttle and they get out, you know, it's just not, I want to be more welcoming than that to the people that are serving the community. So I guess that would be the place I differ. But so I'm not a real fan of this. I think the remote offsite is really interesting if there was a way to do it for the bikes. I don't know where that would be, but it's a good idea. And with the services parked there, what a charming idea. It could be absolutely charming, actually. So I would just, but not for the employees. And we are constrained on the employees, and that's why it's unfortunate we don't have an expanded parking situation for Kenyatta Corners right now. You had more to say, I could tell.
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to pick up on some of these comments. So, yeah, I think 100% to the tagline of parking expansion is critical. And I think connected to that, and I neglected to talk about this in my first round of comments, but regarding like reducing parking requirements for low intensity uses and reducing parking requirements for high intensity uses, I'm very much in support of that, but I might rephrase it as like, let's just look at our parking requirements for these uses. I think there's definitely room for improvement in the allocation. You know, we went through a really long process around outdoor dining. You know, I was very supportive of outdoor dining. The town certainly didn't eliminate outdoor dining. We were trying to support outdoor dining. That's been now caught up in a litigation. And, you know, I think one thing that we can do is look at our parking requirements. With the notion that, you know, parking expansion is critical, but balanced against the need for the commercial uses that we are hearing are critical. So yeah, very much in support of like looking at our parking requirements. Oh, and then just, you know, yeah, really liked the idea of a lot for bikers. It's hard to think like you know, land is so constrained. I don't know where that would occur, but it's worth looking at. And agree with Mayor Domkowski. I think I would not support an off-site lot for employees. I think for the same reasons. I mean, that, you know, I just don't think that would be fair to that population.
Can I have a second bite of the apple?
Of course, second bite.
I want to follow up on
You have as many bites as you want.
the idea of trying to organize the employees for commute. I spoke with commute.org several years ago about the idea of having a shuttle running up and down Woodside Road from Redwood City. And I got a lot of interest from a couple of key employers, but I wasn't able to reach everybody. And I think that's a group, he says he needs 100 people a day to be able to justify running the shuttle up and down. And I think that it's worth exploring it further with the employers in the area to see if there's enough volume that can be generated to make it worthwhile to have. It takes 100 parking spaces if we can pick it, if they can be done that way. So something to think about.
Okay. I mean, you're as a major, yes, yeah. Do you guys mind if we? We're not supposed to do this, Leanne. I'm not supposed to do this. So we're not. Public comments closed. So, sorry about that. Yeah, I know. We can meet separately if you want. You know, I was just going to mention. I'm glad Councilmember Wall brought this up about changing the requirements, and I was hopeful that we would have outdoor dining and we'd be able to bring that next, you know, to change how the calculations behind that. I've since learned that, you know, the hardware store gets like 24 or 27 spots because of its square footage. And obviously, there aren't that many people in there, but that's what Roberts uses for their employee parking right now. So if we do any twists right now without expanded parking, you're just twisting and basically eliminating employee spots. But I think we need to see where things land. But yeah, that's an obvious one in support of outdoor dining if we can get there again at some level. Any other comments on parking? Okay. Do you have enough from us? I mean, it's a little bit across the board, obviously, as always, but.
No, that's good. I think I basically heard no real options off the table. I might suggest that we specify remote lot for bikers, so that we're clear on what we're saying there. And maybe we say commute.org, shuttle, to build off what Dick said. But I think otherwise we keep all these ideas, we keep the conversation going and move this forward. But a lot of good thoughts.
Okay.
And Troy, if I could add one thing too. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Eric, Good City Company. I think one theme that we hear throughout areas that are popular, especially, and it's a combination of what everyone said tonight, is using time limits to take away. One way that, without being able to increase parking, which obviously is a goal, is increasing turnover. And the way that you do that is with time limits and then focused enforcement on the most popular spaces. Because ultimately you want turnover in spaces where customers are, and you want less turnover in places where there's longer term parking. So I think that could be kind of the backdrop for any strategy that you have, is really being focused about it, because enforcement can be expensive in itself. So you want to also use that resource wisely to make sure those spaces are open for customers.
Yeah, good point. And it deals with the biking problem.
That's right.
Good.
Excellent point. Thank you.
Great. All right. I'll move us along to our next topic, the land use topic. So here are their ideas.
Anyone want to touch this hot stove? Maybe I'll happily lead for a change. I loved your opening statement. We're here because of the housing element, because I think that's a first principle that sometimes feels a little bit lost in the discussion. Like housing is just one of 8 different topics. We're here because of the housing element. It's due in 6 months. This is about figuring out which we heard in cycle 6, towns should grow from the center out. They shouldn't be targeted density. And I think we're trying to pay this forward into cycle 7 for whatever council is going to be here, that there's direction that they want housing to be center out. Or again, we're going to do targeted density. It's going to be in a small place in town because that's where the services are, like sewer and whatnot. So I don't know if it's too much to ask from a advisory committee or not, but in a big picture sense, what I would love is not just a survey, but a recommendation. I don't know if I can ask for that from an advisory committee, but a recommendation that we believe housing should come from center out. And therefore, we believe the only way you're going to be able to do density is lifting the height limit, right? So we're advocating for a ballot measure or something to that effect. Now, maybe that's stuff that has to only happen at council level. I'm not a lawyer. Proved that 1,000 times in the last 8 years. But if we can get that, I think we should be emphasizing that this is really first and foremost about housing, and then everything that, there's all these interesting discussions. Should we eliminate a parking space so we can put a crosswalk? So, no, that's a very interesting micro discussion, but how do you have that discussion if you don't know there's density going to be downtown or not? What are you going to do with circulation, parking, access, gathering spaces? All that is tied to the central issue of housing. So I just want to emphasize that for me, I don't know if it's possible to do an entire session on housing, but to just drive home the point that this is why we're here, to Ms. Gilbert's question earlier. And in order to do it, I mean, I know maybe we're not at a place where we're supposed to be advocating 2 versus 3 stories, but I'm thinking 3 stories. If you're gonna lift it, you're gonna need to lift it in order to get the density that's going to be required in cycle 7. And so, so that's basically just a big sort of first principles comment I wanted to throw out, that the housing thing is much bigger than an afterthought. It's like the primary reason this is happening, in my opinion, at least at this time. And I don't have much else to say, I don't think, on any of these. But with the exception of just asking that, I'm just reemphasizing the first principle why we're here. Councilmember Wall.
All right. So I'll start with by saying what I agree with what you just said is I think a session focused on housing is a great idea. I think a recommendation on whether we should pursue a ballot measure to eliminate high restrictions is a great idea. I see why we are here a little bit differently. We are definitely here because of housing, right? Like that is one part of why we are here, and we have a commitment in our housing element to pursue density in the commercial zone. But you know, we are also here to have a town center area plan. There was a huge effort that members of the audience were involved in years ago around coming up with a strategic plan for our town center for many reasons. I don't know that I'm even fully, in the weeds on. That effort stalled and never materialized. And I think it's really important that we have a plan for our town center. And that plan involves all the things that we're talking about tonight: parking, land use, public gathering spaces. So, yes, we're here, housing's a part of it, but I just think it's so much broader than that, because we all care so much about this town. Leanne really agreed with what you said around, like, this is a special, wacky, bucolic, beautiful place with families that want to have gathering places, with, people that want, to be able to go to yoga and go to a fast casual restaurant and bike. And there's all sorts of different interests. And I think it's essential. What we're doing is essential. It's gathering community input and figuring out what is the strategic long-term plan for our town. How do we keep it special, but potentially evolve it in key ways so that it remains functional, it remains special, it remains attractive to the different constituents. So I have been so interested and excited about this effort for a long time. And in my memory, and I may be wrong, the notion of revisiting the town center area plan was being discussed separately from the housing element. And then, housing, landed on the scene and what to do about housing in the center became part of the town center area plan. But in my mind, it's a very important, broader effort. And then, focusing in on the topic at hand, land use, I very much support the correcting or augmenting the commercial uses in town and making it easier. So this came up recently, where I'm aware of somebody wanting to open up a Pilates studio in our commercial district, something that I would love, being a big fan of Pilates. And the reason that it needed to go through an extra layer of review was that that wasn't a use that was listed in our municipal code. So I think, just like common sense updates to our municipal code to make different commercial uses possible, I think is a really positive step forward. Like I said, figuring out what to do about the big elephant in the room, which is the constraints on building heights in town center. I think, a recommendation and like a plan, assuming there is support for that, I think, a recommendation and a plan on how to approach that would be really valuable. Let's see. Yeah, so very supportive of what you presented around new businesses. I think that the advisory committee's recommendation that we make it easier for fast casual, fitness, those types of uses, I think is really smart. Making CUPs easier. You mentioned also reducing parking requirements. Again, I don't know. I think parking is a broader issue, right? Like we need more parking, but we also have, it's just it's a thorny topic. So I wouldn't just say reduce parking requirements, but look at that as a bigger issue. All right, that's it.
Others?
I've got.
Yes, sir.
So I did want to address, I just sort of pivoting off what Councilmember Wall just said, that to answer Leanne Gilbert's question very directly, that's why we're here. And this is a 10 to 20 year plan. I won't be alive when this stuff is, implemented. But we do have to have a plan here. And if we don't have a plan, here's what happens. We get a 105 unit builder's remedy project on Jefferson. And you're going to get high rises on Woodside Road because we're not going to be in compliance. And this is because of Sacramento. And it's because of, Scott Wiener, and, they have an idea for this. These are folks who are dictating what they've never been to Woodside. And yet they think they know what's best. And, this place, we're trying to prevent it from looking like Mountain View or, the corridor in Redwood City and those sorts of things. I actually think that what you guys showed us tonight, those very tasteful, low scale, 2-story and 3-story, although I agree, I like the 2-story almost 100% better than the 3-story. But those were sort of the things that we have in mind here. And if we don't do it, they're going to do it for us. And that's the threat. And so I wanted to ask, perhaps Troy, could you go back to the slide that showed there was a poll on housing that was on there? I remember it was something split at the bottom. Nope. Nope. Nope, that wasn't it. Because it was like 38%, 38%. There you go, right there. So public opinion is evenly split. Last bullet point there. 39% support, 38% opposed, and 23% are unsure. Well, if you look at Raimundo and you look at High Road and you look at 773 Cañada, 100% of the people who live there were against it. So here they could look at it kind of in the abstract and say, yeah, it's like not in my backyard, and this might be a nice place to put him on Goat Hill or Haciendas or what. I love those. Those are the locations that, to their credit, this town council was exploring during the initial stages of the housing element. Personally, I think they gave up on them a little too soon, but whatever. It's, it's where we are, and we ended up with what I think are very inappropriate locations. And we'll live with them and we'll try to figure out what to do with them, even if it does get me in trouble sometimes. But I think in this particular instance, one of the things we have to do, you could go back to that other slide that you had before there. It'll help me a little bit. Yeah, that's fine. But I think that in this particular case for land use, it's more than just housing. And it's one of the reasons, respectfully, I suggested perhaps relocating this, because this is a pretty bucolic, nice location where we are right now. It's a beautiful little area. And a lot of those properties that you showed there might look pretty nice here, and it would help us with the housing element and avoid what's going to happen on Jefferson. A high rise, a big glass and steel thing that has 105 units on a 1 acre parcel. It's just incredible. It's insane. And so having a little village here might be preferable. And, government buildings, next to the fire station might actually be near the library, near the school, might be more appropriate. And you avoid the density issues that we're all fearful of, and that, even the split that you were just showing on the poll isn't so great. But that might eliminate, because this is an area where you're not bordered by lots of communities who have the backyard issue. You don't have the not in my backyard issues when you're talking about Independence Hall and this area. And Thalia, I get it. I know it's a historic building. Hey, welcome to my world. That's kind of, this stuff happens, things change. And I can assure you the people who lived here 50 years ago, a couple of them are in this room right now, but the people who are in here think this place has changed. It's crazy, what's going on here now, and parking and that stuff didn't exist back then, or 100 years ago when they were putting logs down this street and taking them down to Redwood City. It's just, things change, and this is going to change too. But this is a great location where we could satisfy some of the things and avoid builders remedy projects that are completely inappropriate and end up with some 2-story, little cluster homes in a nice area that's kind of reserved and nice and close to town. I also wanted to mention Richard Erstedt. I'm not actually returning the favor because he said some nice things about me, but what I did want to say is commercial real estate is a very specialized area. We don't get to pick tenants. We may want Pilates, I get it. We may want an ice cream shop, but the market's going to dictate what works in those locations and who's going to pay the rent. And Richard makes a great point that you're not going to have a gap next to an Ann Taylor along Woodside Road where, next door to the Village Pub right now. That's not, I mean, some of the drawings that we had looked like you have these nice boxes in there that look a little bit like what you have in the Village by the Stanford Shopping Center. I forgot what Richard referred to them there. I think he referred to them as the car counts. You don't have enough car counts. There's not enough people traveling by there in the parking that can support those kind of commercial enterprises, even if the structure did support it, which it doesn't. These are tiny little awkward buildings that are good for a doctor's office or, those sorts of things. Maybe a Pilates studio, but something, ice cream, I don't know. But we're sort of trapped by the town, what we have here, and it's going to be tough to do certain kinds of build outs. So I wanted to just address not only for land use, not only the using commercial buildings, but also the housing elements that we need to do here. And that's it. Thank you.
Sure. I like a lot of the options. I agree. I think mixed use seems like the best option if we can. I just don't know. What I'm wondering is if we have property owners that are open to it, because it seems like that's one that, there's a lot of things we can do where it's just up to the town. But those, there's zero chance of us doing them unless we have buy-in. And so I'm wondering, do we know where we stand on those? Like if property owners are open to it, what does that look like? Is there like a process to work with them, or is it just kind of a recommendation and we just hope that they buy into it?
It's a good question. I don't want to speak for property owners in the room, but through the CAC discussions, there was, and through our stakeholder discussions, various property owners have said, yeah, I might be able to foresee, some townhouses or some duplexes on my property. I think it really depends on each individual landowner, kind of where they're at with property and their life cycle. And I think we should always keep our minds open that it might be this plan is for the next landowner who buys the property and has a different vision. But I think the short answer is we would probably see a couple of interested current landowners explore these opportunities if we gave them. I don't think we'd see wholesale change. And I think there'd be some properties that would never be likely to change. But we did hear some preliminary interest, nothing solid, but I think we shouldn't necessarily just calibrate this for the present. We should keep it open for, I think part of our goal here is trying to set ourselves up for success for the next housing element cycle in a way that takes a little bit of the pain and the anxiety out of it next time around.
That makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, I with that, I don't exactly like the idea of converting the commercial property, like any commercial properties, to housing only. I feel like that. I think it's important to keep our commercial properties, and I think converting them to mixed use, 2-story, 3-story, I would support. But I think I appreciate all of your work on this. I feel like the ideas are really good, and I would say keep working on developing them and options open, including being creative, potentially moving town hall or other things around. I'd be, I think it's important to keep all those options open.
At the end of the day, we zone and the market is the market.
Sounds like all the options, we'll kind of take them out to the community, have further discussions. The only adjustment I might make.
Wait, before you, could I just add one more thought?
Please,
I want to
please.
pick up on this move town hall, which maybe I'd like to reframe it a little bit how I'm thinking about it. So this area out here between town hall and the other commercial spaces out there, this is a beautiful parcel and would make a lovely augmented town center. I think we heard ideas the last time we met around, I can't remember the term you used, but kind of creating a walkway with cobblestones. And it got me thinking wow, that's a great starting point. I wonder how that could evolve. I also love this building. Think it's beautiful and historic. But I think we are in the kind of the ideation phase. And so I think thinking about like, what could this be out here, right? And I think it connects into something that was brought up earlier around the parcel adjacent to the fire station. I know that they're contemplating that as a training facility. It really makes me wonder, like, is that really the best use of that parcel? You know, could we combine training facility and town and town offices? Maybe there's a better place for training facilities. I have no idea their openness to that conversation. But you can imagine, right? Like if we were to put that parcel to a town center use, what might that open up around here? How could we expand on the idea of the cobblestoned walking path? So I think I would really love for some work to be done to kind of explore those options from a land use standpoint.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of reiterate two different points that were made that I think were important. First, to what Troy said and to what the council members were saying, there's two real reasons why we have to think long-term on this and why most planning documents are 10 or 20-year plans. It's to Troy's point, is turnover in property. Different property owners have different interests. And the second point, and maybe even more important, is just market cycles. You know, in a 20-year, you're going to have 2 or 3 different real estate market cycles where there's different incentives to build things. So what you want to do is line your long-term vision up so that door is open to what you want to see happen in your area, and then the market opens and then they're able to come in. Closely related to that is when you're looking at different land uses that you want. Typically what we tell folks from an economic development standpoint is, you know, first, any zoning law that's out there was usually adopted at a particular point in time to solve a problem. So it is good to look at those problems every 10, 15 years because A, those problems may not exist anymore, and B, market conditions have changed to where there's new issues that you have to deal with. So when you do have a vision of what you want your businesses to be, really the key is how do you reduce barriers so that money could flow in so that those type of businesses could open up, whether that's reducing building permit time, reducing what the use permit process is, but really you want to line up your plan so that there's less friction involved. So that when people do want to invest their money to open those type of businesses that align with what the, excuse me, town's vision is.
Great. Well, so I guess what I was about to say was, in light of this discussion, I wonder if we articulate the ideas about village hall and town hall separately and kind of take temperature on those separately. Those are two different approaches, and we maybe articulate the vision for town hall, which could include moving the town hall. Maybe we try and flesh out that idea a little bit more as part of a concept. So I might just make that one edit. Otherwise, I think we're good to go. Land use.
It's an unexpected iteration, but yeah, that makes sense.
Great. All right. Oh, and to your earlier point, just about the approach or the workflow here, I had the same vision, which is I'm hoping to develop through our final CAC meeting, a recommendation for a clear policy, which we then bring to council. You guys endorse it, and that becomes the plan direction. So it becomes this sort of stepwise process. So
perfect. Thank you.
Great. All right. Last topic, public spaces. So here are some ideas.
Okay. Anyone want to kick us off? I can try again if you want. Oh, I'm happy to. So again, on outdoor dining, we all want outdoor dining, obviously, but yeah, without parking, you know, it's all tied back to parking. And without parking services. My only thoughts on this really were farmers market. We've tried this many times and it's never taken off. And we have a farmers market. It's called Roberts Market. So I personally wish that one wasn't on the list, but that's my own overlay. And actually this gazebo idea, now we're sort of pivoting to the use of that area as potential housing density. So I don't know. How do you get to the, okay. That's about all I would say for the moment. So I've always, I guess the last thing I might say is I always had a dream that we would have a band shell. We would have 4th of July concerts here and the concert series over the summer. And I always thought that would be a beautiful thing to do as a gathering spot with the Woodside Village Band. And that's a small town, beautiful image to me, but I'm not sure we're going to get there. And I don't know how to get there without a lot of funding, but particularly when we have other priorities like housing. Other thoughts?
I did want to comment on the farmer's market. And we heard a lot of negative pushback from property owners, from business owners about some of the public spaces near Roberts and near the Pioneer, that there were a lot of reasons not to do that. And including, yeah, well, there was like, yeah, but I mean, we didn't want to compete with them and, you know, also force them to clean up and take care of those areas. But I think that I love farmers markets, I got to tell you, but I don't like the idea of putting a business next to a business. You know, I can tell you Christine Roberts was very much against it, and I am as well. But I love them. We shop at them about every other weekend. And I think that they're great, but you know, that's not great for the business next door that's paying taxes and doing all these other things and has overhead and employees and, you know, refrigerate, you know, all sorts of things that they have to do and overhead that they have to cover. And then suddenly some people pull up in, you know, trailers and, you know, compete with them and selling fresh produce, so and baked goods or whatever it is. So I'm not crazy about that idea. I think that there's other things that we could do. And again, outdoor dining always rises to the top. We're not against it, but boy, if you want an example of stuff we don't control, that would be, I mean, that's Exhibit A. We all want it, and it's like the market speaks, because if the property owner, the landlord, can't make it work, it's not going to happen, and they can make it come or go as they wish. And that's sort of the situation that we're in right now. But I mean, we're going to try to do everything we can to get outdoor dining, and right at the top of the list would be obviously carving out some parking for that as well. And that's what this is all about.
All right, I can go. So I think there's some great ideas on this list. You know, I tend to agree with the comments around the farmers market, mainly for the reasons that have already been stated, but also, you know, we did try a farmers market here in town a number of years ago, and it was really not very well attended, and I think for that reason kind of folded. But other than that, I'm not sure I would take anything off this list, but I will kind of highlight a couple. I think outdoor dining is, somebody else said it, I'll repeat it, sorely missed. I'm hoping that regardless of what happens with this litigation, that the property owner, the businesses there, whatever support the town needs, like to offer, like that we can figure this out, because everybody loved it. It was such an asset to the town. So hoping we can find a way through on that one. I think one of the things that is really missing for me in this town center area plan is kind of a signature gathering space. And you know, whether that's a gathering space where we could have summer concerts or speaker series, a park like Portola Valley. I mean, our peer cities do this so well, and I get that there are a lot of constraints here, but I think, like, to me, this is like the most glaring missing thing here, is a proposal around, like, here's how we could make that happen, and maybe it's right out our door. I don't know. But I would really love to see something where there's a meaningful gathering space. And I didn't get that from the little triangle outside of Roberts, right? Like, that's not it. So what can be done? Help us. And then also really loved the idea around making town center look nicer. We definitely want to balance it with, like, the bucolic nature of Woodside. We don't want to over-engineer, but I think there's definitely room for improvement when you enter town and as you travel through town. I think definitely exploring that more and coming back with, like, some specific recommendations I would be very much in support of.
And just on that last point, you know, landscaping and beautification of town is something that we do have a lot of interest from our citizens in privately funding. And so I think I would almost bold that one out at some level that there's a desire and there's great projects. We want to hear about them. Other thoughts on public gathering spaces? Yes.
I guess I would say, I believe this building is an underutilized resource. We're talking about a gathering place, community center. We do have a lot of activities in this building. It's just not as well publicized sometimes as it could be. I mean, we have the art committee every month is having programs. We have workshops at least once a month, sometimes 2 or 3 times a month. And I couldn't even tell you some of the other things I don't know about, but there's a lot of things that go on here. And if we want to create a community center, maybe we want to look at this as the key to it. Then are there other things we want to do to enhance this? Parking would have to be part of that. But I don't think I put a whole lot of effort into building a new community center as opposed to thinking about what we have now and what can we do with it. Farmers market, I don't see the market for it here in Woodside. I don't think it's a big enough market. I don't know where you'd do it without competing head to head with one of our key businesses. The rest is kind of like, good stuff to be looking at. I have no problem with it.
Got it. Anything to tack on there?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, I think, adding the outdoor dining, getting it back, I think everyone's in agreement on that. So ideas on how to facilitate that would be welcome. I agree with Jen's comments on, really having a community center. And I think this could be part of it where we're sitting here. I think, some ideas would be appreciated for things we could add, to this property or move things. I don't even know what that would look like exactly, but I saw there's a spot for a gazebo if we think bigger and and if we move things around and get creative, what could that look like? Otherwise, yeah. And yeah, I would agree with, I think the only thing we can strike is the farmer's market. So
this is the most ironclad section we've had yet.
It was easy. Strike farmers market, but I will say I am hearing a desire ultimately for a cohesive strategy about where the heart of the town center is. Is it here or is it not? And if it's here, what does it look like? And how does that relate to the shared? We called it a shared street last time. The nice cobblestone, but how does that fit into that? So anyway, so that's good thoughts for us from the plan perspective. But for right now, we'll just strike the one bullet and we'll go from there. Great. Thank you so much.
Does that include urban? That was all combined. All right, that's it. Okay, well, thank you for all of your leadership, and it's a thought-provoking conversation. We appreciate being here tonight, so thank you. Good luck, you guys. 2 items left tonight. Any volunteer report? Nothing? Okay. And then anything anyone wants to hear from council communications?
I do.
Yes, sir.
I've had actually a few from constituents and from others. One, as our town manager knows, I'm getting some complaints from neighbors of Barclay Field about amplified noise. The point was made that literally every promise that was made to them about noise and use of that field has been broken over the roughly 20 years since it was dedicated by me, by the way. And it's been, and I think that it's those people deserve better, I think. And we need to do something because I don't hear it where I live, but where the families that live closer to it, by the way, Woodside residents and Redwood City residents, but mostly Woodside residents are, they're subject to hearing, softball players being announced on a loudspeaker, all during the day and sometimes in the early evening, and that's not what they were promised. And so we need to take some action to at least give them some peace, which I think they deserve. The other thing I wanted to mention was 625 Eastview. I've been talking with the town attorney about it. This is one of the properties that we're proceeding with abatement procedures. It's a nuisance. And my understanding is that it is now, we have an attorney working on it to, I'll use the word foreclose. We're not foreclosing on it, but I mean that we're taking steps to make it safe and do that. But it takes time, and apparently there has been some progress made with that. There's now red tape surrounding the house, but neighbors are aware that it's still a nuisance and attracting, vandalism and mischief and that sort of thing. I also wanted to mention at the SFO Airport Roundtable that we've really tried to shake it up quite a bit. And as some of you may know, one of the runways is under construction. Maybe you don't know that. That happened about a month ago, and coincidentally with that, the FAA decided to shut down one of our, to change our staggering of our planes that can land side by side. It actually was because of in Washington, D.C. at the Potomac, the helicopter that crashed into the airplane. It didn't have anything to do with SFO. They changed this rule nationwide, but it changed the flight patterns pretty dramatically. And interestingly enough, the cities that are most affected by noise are finding it a lot quieter. And the cities that had been least affected by noise are suddenly getting complaints. And that includes Woodside. So Woodside, where we get almost no complaints, and in fact, I've even made the statement that in all my years sitting in this room, I'm not aware of anybody ever coming to that microphone and complaining about airplane noise. Maybe I forgot, but I don't remember a single time. Suddenly, we're starting to get them. Suddenly, we've seen a couple of emails and we've gotten some complaints, and I see it on Nextdoor and other places that suddenly this flight pattern has changed, and now Woodside's getting it. By the way, it's not like we're Millbrae or Brisbane. I mean, we're not getting the kind of noise that, we're right under the flight patterns, but it still bothers people. Portola Valley, for some reason, seems to get it worse than we do, but I'm just bringing that up. We actually are having a workshop, a public workshop on Thursday night at Brisbane City Hall to try to get public input on some of the steps we're trying to take to do it. I've been sitting on that group since 1999. I know I am pretty old, but this group, the SFO Airport Roundtable, I think is one of the least effective groups you could imagine in government. We've been talking about the same thing for 30 years that I'm aware of, and nothing really has changed. And so the new chairman, Steve Rinaldi, who's the mayor of Millbrae, me, I'm the vice chair, we're trying to shake things up a little bit and make some changes to it. And we've gotten some cooperation from the airport director and some other folks. So we are going to try to do some things. And in the meantime, it's creating some discomfort for some other people, but I just wanted folks aware of that. That's it. Thank you.
Anything else?
Yep. Just wanted to make the council aware of something coming out of CCAG. So there's an opportunity that that board asked to get highlighted. So basically, there are some quick build project opportunities. And I know, Louis, you're looking into this, and we've been asked to provide project concepts by July 1st. So it's around the Metropolitan Transportation Commission is currently seeking potential quick build project concepts from local jurisdictions. If you didn't know what a quick build project it's a low cost, rapidly deployable improvement that can help address safety concerns, improve multimodal access. I'm not sure what that is, and test transportation solutions before permanent implementation. So this is all part of a 5-year regional initiative. Started in 2025, running through 2030, supported by approximately $12 million in funding. So it's in early stages, but MTC is requesting jurisdictions to identify potential project locations and concepts to help evaluate partnerships and coordinate project delivery. So Woodside's encouraged to coordinate with our Public Works Department to identify potential projects. And, they definitely caveat that a submission of a concept is not a commitment of funding. But I think, I think these are all great things, and we should be curious to hear once you have an idea of like whether or not we might want to submit something. It's due July 1st, so maybe we could hear about whether or not we can submit projects at a future council meeting.
Councilmember Wells, I already submitted for the Upper Ola Honda Road project. So there's another concept that we're also working on. It's Kenyatta Road in Glenwood. So
Okay, fantastic. I think you might have told me that, so sorry, apologies for not remembering that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Anything else? The only other item I saw on an ABEG calendar for next week was a presentation on Housing Cycle 7. It's the first time I've seen that somewhere. So we'll figure out a way to get coverage on that and report back. And I think with that, I'll just wish my colleagues well and thank them for their collegiality and professionalism. And we'll call it at 9:55.